All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to HQ. Now, this is episode 1 of the journey to Commonwealths. So we're going to be chronicling all of my training over the next few months as I head towards Commonwealth Championships at the end of November, early December in Auckland, New Zealand. Now, I've spoken a lot about this meet before, and one of the big things I said for a long time was that I wanted to get back into equipment. The thing is, after Worlds, I kind of have a chip on my shoulder and feel like I have something to prove with my raw performance and my raw numbers and my raw strengths. So I've chosen not to compete equipped at Commonwealths out of the sheer fact that I had a really crappy prep for Worlds, and I was really left unhappy with my performance at Worlds. Now, I know I said in the wrap-up video there were a lot of positives to take away, and there were. But I wasn't able to put on the platform what I feel like I had or should have, could have, whatever. So my sort of drive heading into this meet, and the reason that this next competition is going to be important, is because I feel like I'm at a place where hopefully I can put together a lot of really good training, where I've kind of stabilized at this heavier body weight, and I think I'm starting to get some of the benefit of being a 120, which is why I'm not going to cut yet. I had also kind of floated the idea of maybe cutting back down to 105, but again, I feel like I have more to do, and maybe more to prove isn't wrong. The ideal hopefully is that I'm looking to prove it to myself as opposed to prove it to everybody else. But yeah, I think it's always a mix of that intrinsic and extrinsic stuff. So starting things off, we are in a sort of non-specific block that's geared more towards things that aren't the competition movements in singles at high intensity. So if you want to think about it, there's a spectrum of specificity, and specificity means basically exactly what it would, literally, how specific are the movements that you're doing to the sport. Most specific, comp lift for a single; least specific, something like bicep curls. So we're further on the left side here of the spectrum, if you want to look at it left to right. And what I've been doing is trying to work on weaknesses, specifically in energy systems, specifically to try to increase my work capacity. One thing that worked for me in training for a long time was doing very, very little. And now it's getting to the point where doing very, very little, I don't think is driving those same adaptations. So we have to figure out how to get me back to being able to handle more work, because it appears more work is necessary for me to push new PRs. So at this point, I'm doing a lot of sets of 8 in compound movements. I'm doing a lot of protocols where there's very limited rest and sort of recurring sets of 8, like a rest pause style of training. I've incorporated some AMRAPs into my training, and you'll see a lot of that come through. The hopeful outcome is that I get better at those AMRAPs, that I'm able to do more of those sort of extended sets, and that my work capacity gets better as a result of that. So this week started off with safety bar squats, and this was one of those protocols where I did 8. I stripped the weight on the bar down to, I think, 65 or 70%. I rested 1 minute, which in most cases is barely enough time to get the weight off the bar, and then did another set of 8. And I'm supposed to repeat that secondary set, do as many of those with 1 minute rest as I need to before that second load becomes a 9 RPE, so a really hard set. In this case, it only took 1. I did 1 top set, I rested a minute, I did 1 more set, and I was done. There's probably some really good video footage of me just hanging on to the rack for dear life, panting, yelling, having a hard time with it. This protocol was chosen based on some stuff that we experimented with in a deload. And this was the stuff I was worst at, were these kinds of protocols. And now this is my whole block. Thanks, Mike. So went from there into comp bench and had like a top set, so a good indicator of where my strength is at. set of 5 there. And again, feeling pretty detrained on the bench, but no shoulder issues, nothing like that. And then into an AMRAP after that, and then a whole bunch of back off sets. So basically what's happened with my bench is we've decided to really turn up the volume. In order to get that volume, we're staying at around a 7 RPE, so a moderate set. And we don't want that set to be too hard, but there's a strict percentage-based weight that I need to hit. So 80% for as many reps as it takes to get to a 7, for as many sets as it takes to get to the amount of work that we want to do. So I ended up doing 7 or so additional sets that day. To take a quick step back, the SSB was a bit crappy on my hip. I was definitely feeling my hip. I'm still kind of feeling my knee a little bit. My old hip injury flares up quite a bit at the beginning of training blocks, especially when I've taken some time off. Took about 2 weeks off after Worlds. Finished up that day with some back work, pretty standard fare. Day 2 moved into, again, the same protocol as SSB from the day before, but with snatch grip RDLs. So these were definitely more conservatively loaded. They were a little bit more comfortable on the hip, and that just kind of tends to be the case as I get more and more trained, as I get into a training block. The hip tends to kind of smarten up. It just needs to be exposed and desensitized to pain. So those went okay. Still only got the one sort of back off set 1 minute later. And then it was at a 9 RPE. So again, that's the metric to improve. And then more back work this day. I set up and did the like a dumbbell seal row variation. Now I've done a whole bunch of chest supported row for anybody who's followed the training for a bit, and often very heavy. This was a similar protocol, 4 reps at a 10. So very sort of high strength stimulus there. And it was an interesting movement to do that with. We'll see how it progresses, whether or not I have to go back to the chest supported row. I don't know if we're gonna run out of dumbbells, so we'll see. Now my 3rd day, we were all gung-ho and set up to stream. And we had streamed a little bit previously. We were moving the stream out here for training. And I went to input my training and realized, oh, I'm not supposed to squat today. So it's literally supposed to be a few sets of close grip bench. Now, partly because one of the things that we decided on, Mike and I, my coach, we decided on a higher frequency of squat exposure. And the other reason being, I wanted a good show for the stream, you know, and I wanted to squat. So I ended up kind of overriding the program there, putting some comp squats in because I felt like I really wanted to do that, and had a pretty successful day. I think I worked up to maybe 215 for my top set of 5. Again, you know, definitely not the strength levels I left off, you know, peaking for Worlds at or anything, but a better start than safety bar squats, more comfortable, more smooth, more fluid, less hip pain, less knee issue. So definitely, you know, slowly chipping away at starting to build some momentum on the squat, which felt really good. And also hit an AMRAP on the squat, which I haven't done for a long time. I'm not sure if I got 11 or 12 or something reps there, but it was terrible. It felt terrible. And I'm excited to get more reps next time. From there, went into some close grip bench. That was pretty standard stuff, and that finished out that day. Now, the final day of the week, my legs were thrashed. So the spreadsheet that my coach uses to deliver programming auto-regulates based on soreness, stiffness, stress levels, perceived fatigue, all those kinds of things. So on this day, it was basically like, bro, you don't need to do any lower body work. You're feeling it. And I was. So on Saturday, I basically came in and did 7 sets of bench, a whole bunch of bench. Unfortunately, Dylan doesn't come in on Saturdays, so you'll notice the camera work is not nearly as nice on this day, but I bet Dylan will make it look pretty good in post regardless. And then some like seated cable rows, which were pretty straightforward. And that was the week. So all in all, my performance was actually down a little bit on the bench at the end of the week, but given that I had such a big exposure on day one. I think that's pretty warranted, and I think even being within that 2.5 kilo variance in that case was, a pretty decent sign that I can handle the workload. It's going to take a week or so to be adapted to it, but we'll be doing a whole bunch more bench today, so we'll see how all that goes. I'm really hopeful with my deadlift being on a lower frequency, so you'll notice I only did snatch grip RDLs last week. I'll be doing comp deadlift this week, but that's kind of the span that I think I need in terms of frequency. So I think I need once a week, once every other week for my comp deadlift. Leading into Worlds, we really cranked the frequency up on everything. So I was doing 3 or 4 squats a week, 4 or 5 benches a week, and 3 or 4 deadlifts a week. My squat and bench responded really well. My deadlift felt really bad for a long time. So I'm thinking with a slightly lower frequency on the deadlift, things will be a little bit better throughout this next block. Yeah, I'm excited to see how this goes. It kills me. This block is really, really hard, but I'm kind of really enjoying that. I'm enjoying being able to push myself. I'm enjoying being able to kind of butt up against some hard limits in my work capacity, literal AMRAPs and things like that, where it's a very different kind of top end or limit. You know what I mean? So I think that'll be interesting to work with. And the reasoning behind Mike wanting to run this into our more standard blocks into Commonwealths was because he had a lot of success with this in his own training. So I'm also really hoping that this translates into a nice big performance at Commonwealths, and that is kind of at the end of the day what I'm after right now. I want to go out and I would like to post a 910 to 920 kilo total. I would like to push my world record deadlift further, and I think these are things that I'm capable of with some certainty. So at this point, I'm doing literally everything in my power, trying to continue a lot of that not motivation, but that momentum that I built up leading into Worlds. And I just want to see what I'm capable of at, Raw 120. And the big, sort of goal beyond Commonwealths will be Worlds next year in Malta, IPF Open Classic Worlds. So hopefully you'll want to tag along, and we'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.